Hello, Clutter Warrior. Today we're going to talk about it's not a bargain if you don't need it. And I'm going to begin with a story. Uh, Many years ago now, it's all relative. Many years ago, had a lovely lunch at the offices of Oprah magazine. My friend Amy Gross, who was then the editor-in-chief of the magazine, brought me in, and I had a lovely lunch with her and Gail King and several other senior members of the team at the magazine. We had this great lunch. They grilled me for about an hour and 45 minutes. I literally, I think, took 2 or 3 bites of my sandwich. They all ate their lunches. I remember carrying my sandwich home in a little to-go bag because I did not have any time to eat. They just kept. I mean, there were, I think, 6 women and me, and they kept peppering me with questions, and it was a very robust conversation. Anyway, during the conversation, at one point, I said, it's not a bargain if you don't need it. And Gail King literally stopped eating and said, "What did you say?" And I said, "Gail, it's not a bargain. It's not a bargain if you don't need it." And she said, I've never heard that before. That is like, it was a light bulb moment for her, really, an aha moment for her to just understand. It doesn't matter how cheap it is. If you don't need it, it's still money that's leaving. And that's one of those things about bad math, which we like to talk about here, is you can tell yourself any number of stories about why they're practically giving it away, but they're not actually giving it away, why it's so cheap that it's hard to leave it behind, but you could leave it behind. All of that story, and it might be any number of your 200 lies that you're going to tell yourself today. You just have to hold on to that if you do not need it, it isn't a bargain. I don't care what they've priced it at for you. And you really have to just sit with the knowledge that you have however much money you have in your pocket. You buy something, you have less money, you have this thing, but you have less money. So regardless of how you feel about your financial situation, whether you've got millions of dollars or you've got dozens of dollars, or you just have a bunch of cents, don't be fooled and seduced by somebody else's message. There's a corollary here, right? We talk often about the difference between urgent and important, and we're not going to get lost down that rabbit hole because that's a whole other podcast episode. All I'm going to share with you about that is the easiest way to distinguish urgent from important is urgent is if it isn't important to you. Urgent is typically somebody else's agenda, and important would be yours if it were important. So you don't have to show up for the volunteer fire department and run around putting out everybody else's fires. Back to the idea of it's not a bargain if you don't need it. So you can see how they're related to each other, right? It's somebody else's bargain because they're trying to sell it to you. You don't have to buy into that relationship with them. Just because they're offering it to you and they're offering it to you at a discount doesn't mean that you have to agree and then give them the money that they're asking for. You can pick it up, you can play with it, you can interact with it, you can observe it and still put it back on the shelf, put it back on the hanger. Again, don't get hung up on where the object is in the store, whether it's online or in a physical brick and mortar store, right? The idea is, if you can recognize it's a perfectly fine thing, I don't need it, I'm not going to bring it home. That's the corner to turn. That's really where we want your attention, because that's where you have the agency before you actually do the transaction. Once you've done the transaction, now you've created potentially more clutter for yourself. You've brought something home, you might decide to return it, right? Which you can totally do. You might have other feelings or story come up about like, oh, I don't want to be the schmuck that has to now take this back or put it back in the box and send it back to Amazon. I'll just keep it. That you also need to really grasp. That's what they're banking on. That's why there are billions of dollars in unused gift cards every year, because people are too sheepish to actually assert themselves and correct a potential mistake that they've made, or you don't need to get too attached to the idea of it being a mistake. You're not a mistake. You've made a mistake. If you've purchased something that you don't need, you can disentangle yourself from it. You can return it and not beat yourself up for it, but recognize, okay, so what did that just feel like? What did I just do there? My time is precious. My time is valuable. I don't want to invest it or spend it in that way again. And try to remember that and hold on to that so that the next time you are invited to spend money that you don't need to spend on something that you don't need to bring home, you can remember, oh, right, I did this before. It's not a bargain if I don't need it. I'm just going to leave it in the store. That's how you break that pattern. So it's not very complicated. It definitely comes with its own bundle of feelings and thoughts. But the act itself of not doing something just requires your willingness to breathe and be present in the moment to not do something. So it's not a bargain if you don't need it. That's my tip that I want to share with you. Thanks for tuning in. I'm looking forward to being back with you again real soon. Bye.